Hello, one and all. My wife sent me this video by this lovely lady whom I don't know. Apparently, she runs a website called Anna's Food Lifestyle, right? And she's a British lady, and she's rather unhappy about the situation with the digital IDs, but from a different angle than the one that is discussed as general thing, because the government is planning on putting the digital ID down already for the children from birth, like all European disgusting countries do, and they are basically stating that the government can know everything about you and can link all of the information about you everywhere, not breaching the Data Protection Acts. Now, she's also discussing how she would like to see some citizen action, and she is also discussing how the previous petition, the one with 2+ million folks signing it about the digital ID not being implemented or not wanting it being implemented, has simply been waved off with "it's for the greater good." There's so much to say about this, so let's let her talk for a bit, and then I shall interject.
All in the name of protecting children, for kids' well-being, that sort of thing. Again, sign a petition. Petition has until 25th of October. As I said, it's got 137k currently,
Tomorrow.
obviously still rising, but not a lot. Considering how much the Brit ID got, you had like 2.5, 2.6 million, and it's not even the end of the term. This has only got 137,000. But to me, this is far worse. It's labeling our kids, and it's going to be pretty much from the day they're born with the barcode.
Okay, so a couple of things. Everything you're saying is correct, but let's try and interpret why possibly there is so much less engagement with this second petition to the first. I think there's going to be a couple of reasons. Reason number one, after the first petition has been so intensely successful, when we're talking about 2.5 million or whatever the number is, and it gets waved off with just brushed off incredibly easily, it tells you very clearly that the petition system does not work. Just like democracy does not work. It literally does not work. Like, people who elected Starmer, I bet you that they elected First of all, they didn't elect Starmer. They wanted to elect Labour. Second of all, when they elected Labour, they wanted not to elect the Tories. Right? So there, like, lots of people are voting against as opposed to for. And a huge majority of people aren't voting at all. People are not engaging with the system because it's all rigged. This is just another example of how it is. But it's rigged on even without foul play, it's rigged, right? Here's why. Let's give this example. So, let's say I'm a Labour person. Shame on me, I suppose, but it is what it is. And I want to vote Labour, etc. But say I don't like Corbyn because he's a communist, I don't like, etc. But I really don't want the Tories in power. So I'm going to swallow my situation. I prefer not to vote, but I think it's best to vote. So I'm going to go and vote. And I'm going to vote for Labour. So Starmer comes up. And Starmer says we'll do X, Y, and Z. Then some time passes, and Starmer wants to pass something that has nothing to do with what he was proposing. Also, Starmer suddenly has acknowledged that migration is a problem, even though Starmer's Labour. He's not supposed to acknowledge that migration is a problem. They have been defending the concept of migration for a very long time. So I'm betrayed from that perspective. Suppose I'm pro-migration, or I believe that the humanitarian side is more important than the civic side, whatever, right? So Starmer is not doing something he promised, and he is doing something he didn't. And you can see how they are pushing forward this, like, relentlessly. It's unbelievable how fast this is being implemented. Of course, when proposing something like this, a tax should follow. How are you going to financially support this particular project? Doesn't matter. You understand? Everybody's going like, this is retarded. I'm not playing ball. I'm done. Like, what power do I have? Everybody's feeling powerless. This is probably the point of semi-non-return, like when all of the population is non-represented by anybody, they are unarmed, and they are unwilling to fight. Right? I don't know. Right? Because this is obviously sufficient for a revolt, which none of us, that includes me, are prepared to fight. So I'm not sure. Anyway, so yeah, point number one, I believe, is general disillusionment with the entire machinery. I think the petition is a waste of time, writing to your MP is a waste of time, voting is a waste of time. I'm not British, but point still applies. I have 3 citizenships, and in all 3, I think it's a gigantic waste of time. So people don't engage. Point number one. Point number 2, you have mentioned it yourself, you might mention it again, but government suppresses information. They always do. They run these, they pass these laws called omnibus laws. They do it globally, everywhere, where they pass a law with a label on it and then it contains 57 million different laws, which they haven't read or written. Written or read, I suppose. And they just vote on them, etc. Between the civil service, just watch Yes Minister again. There's a shadow government that's doing it, and whatever friggin' awful individual that's doing these sorts of experiments on people, individual or group, I really don't know. And it doesn't matter. Point is, that's kind of, that's why you don't know about it. Third, and I think a very important aspect, is nobody has kids, madam. You may have some, I have some, but loads of people don't have any. So to them, whether a child is born with a barcode or without, they either don't know or even more perniciously prefer for a child not to be born at all, with or without a barcode. So there, I think these are at least 3 reasons. Well, I suppose 2, because one is still how government operates and how it's not accountable to the people to any degree. And the other one is how nobody cares. These are the 2 reasons. And nobody cares for obvious reasons. Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. And nobody cares because there's no relationship between government and person. None. None at all. But the Americans used to shout no taxation without representation. And then they would throw their toys out the pram. And that's what everybody should do. In the Western world, for sure. Absolutely necessary. So, when you give birth, as an example, you don't do it in a hospital. You have any health issues, you don't go to the NHS. You start refusing to use anything. As much as you can. Go live rural, absolutely, nothing to do with cities, etc. Grow your own food if you can. Go as preparedness as possible. I don't know what to tell you. Right? If you're a pacific individual who doesn't want to fight battles because it's not in you, and that's, in my opinion, understandable and respectable. I suppose I'm tooting my own horn, but I think I might be prepared to fight something. I don't know, but I'm more of an intellectual individual than a physical one. Still, I know how to fire a weapon. Whatever the case may be, there's no illusion that there's any solution to this problem. Therefore, the solution must exist somewhere else, and that solution must be in the world where we're not allowed to go, which is the world of you don't matter. So the politicians start shouting, etc. It just don't matter. Nobody shows up for any election ever for any reason, right? So governments are going and they become open dictatorships. And every time the media opens their mouths, you shut them down. You turn them off. No BBC ever, right? No school, no nothing. You want liberty? Chase it. So long as it's still possible for you to do it. But it is right now. So, anyway, let's continue.
This is like something out of the film. So now there is still time to be able to kind of change that. And I feel horrified that I only found out about it now. How can I have missed that? This is what I feel. And how has there not been enough coverage on this, even on the social media, like it has been for the Brit ID? It just hasn't been. But, guys...
We all ran out of steam. For the Brit ID, there's been lots of coverage, lots of people talking about it, etc. Lots of people wanting something done, and nothing was done. Nothing has changed, and nothing will change, ever. Because they've set their mind to it. I mean, these politicians openly tell you, like, if you vote in a certain direction, we simply won't follow what you said. Look at Brexit. Right?
We have 2 weeks to go to try to push, to try to basically... share it across social media, email your MPs, do whatever you think you can do, if you've got children or if you don't. Because to be fair, if that goes ahead as a legislation or as a law in fact, and they're going to implement that kind of security control on our children, then when the Brit ID cards come out, that's going to be laughable. But that means over the time, there's going to be just as strict or as vast is what they're planning for our children.
Yes. So here's what you do. I'm going to conclude here. When you give birth, you don't do it in a hospital. You do it at home and you don't declare it. So your child becomes born, existing, but not according to the government. It's going to be a problem if you want to travel and all of that. But your child can then apply for all of those numbers later on. Possibly. I don't know. That's an interesting proposition. But of course, you can't use any services. It's also very difficult to tax somebody who doesn't exist. I don't know, man. This is messed up. Really hard. And it's been messed up for a very long time. I don't think I've ever lived in a country that didn't require me to have an ID of some sort. When I was in the UK, my only ID was the driver's license. It's still an ID. It's a permission to drive, and it's still an ID. It's got a photo, it's got an address, it's got all of the information. The difference here is the telematic systems that now exist that are capable of triangulating all of this information and essentially making it appear on anybody's screen very quickly by simply running an SQL query, searching the database to then tell you, hey, Joe, who has this, let's say, social insurance number, there's all these numbers, that's all he's done, and so on and so forth. That's his level of education, his marital status, and whatnot. This is obviously disgusting. This doesn't bear any discussion. Yeah, I'll give you a silly little example about how awful this is and how it doesn't work. Cars are already like this. They're all tracked, right? Globally, in different ways, but globally. So I own a vehicle that I have imported into where I live. And I imported it from outside of the EU. Within the EU, there's loads of protectionistic systems. Like if you import something from the EU to the EU, you have a facilitated way of locally of local conformity of, let's say, the vehicle. Vehicles are very interesting because they're different from any other object. Okay, so I've imported this vehicle from Canada to here into Europe. And when I did it, I brought the history file with it, and I have demonstrated in a certain way that the vehicle was meant for the German market when it was originally sold in the 90s. Now, I cannot I cannot demonstrate it with a plate. I do not know what German plate it would have had. Now, why is this important? Because in the country in which I am, the taxation is dependent on on vehicles, because of course you are taxed on what you possess. And so this vehicle is taxed as if it was a modern vehicle, but it's got old school emissions, so it's taxed absurdly high every year. And it's not accounted or acknowledged that this vehicle was of European manufacturing and European sale back in the day. So I have a European plate for it, but it dates too recently, so it doesn't change anything. Because it was in Germany twice, this vehicle. It was owned by two German owners at two different times. So I called my DVLA equivalent, or whatever you guys call it, and I said, I've got this problem. I'm paying too much tax on a vehicle that obviously should pay less, right? And they say, well, if you can't demonstrate that it was in Europe before, you need to be taxed like this. And it's like, but this vehicle is Italian, dude. That doesn't make any sense. Okay. Like, you know this vehicle, right? You've played with this vehicle in Gran Turismo, most likely. Anyway, so there's no reasoning with anybody. So I called the German DVLA. They are slightly more professional because they're German, so they're a bit more tidy than in Southern Europe that try to work to any government, talk to any government entity is just, it's like, I don't know, it's like pulling your own teeth. And I told to them, and they say, no, because of Freedom of Information Act, we cannot give you this information. I said, but I can provide you proof that I'm the rightful owner. I can provide you proof, and I can give you the VIN of the vehicle, okay, because the vehicle has its barcode, so to speak, right? I can give you all of this information. All I need from you is a declaration that this vehicle was indeed matriculated in Germany at this time, right? And he says, no, I can't do it. And I says, and what can I do for you to do it? And they said, well, if your government makes the request. And I'm like, oh, beautiful. So if my owners request from these owners, you, right, the information that pertains to me. So I cannot get information about my own vehicle, mine, okay, for data protection. But my government could, except getting my government to do literally anything for its own people is almost impossible. So I have to pay a gigantic tax. Every year. For possession. Welcome to Soviet stuff. So I could not pay tax. Then if I get caught driving around by the police, I get pay fines. There is no safety. You don't matter, madam. I'm sorry. Your children matter even less. Okay? This is all going to collapse. When it's going to collapse, I don't know. How the collapse is going to look like, I don't know. Okay? But all of these systems have made it so that people don't want to live. You don't want to live, I don't want to live. We have a small sparkle of willingness to live still somewhere in the back of our minds. And I suspect it's primarily the survival instinct and not much more. And so we're clear, whatever I say or whatever you say, nobody in government cares to any degree. Because democracy. Not so much. So best of luck to you, best of luck to your children, best of luck to me, best of luck to my children, best of luck to my cars that I need to overpay for. And it's always very sad, which is really annoying. I would like to leave documentation of my mind's workings to my children as I'm doing on this channel in a slightly more positive fashion, but I don't think it's possible. What a rubbish time to be alive. Should have been born friggin' 30 years prior. So at least I would be aging into this. Quick little note. This video keeps going. Sorry. When I was talking to my father-in-law, who's like 70 something. And he was going like, it's all right. I'm about to go, so it doesn't matter to me. Which I think is an incredibly pernicious position because he is, well, his generation is one of the ones that have really spurred this on, and so has ours. Yeah. And then my mother-in-law said, it's fine. If old people go extinct, I think it's just better for everybody. I don't know what to tell you, man. This is my family. So yeah. Sadness all around. Goodbye.